Working? Hello? Okay. Thanks for that introduction. I struggle to live up to that now. And I'm conscious of the fact that I'm the thing between you and lunch, which is never a good position to be in. But I will stick to time. Okay, so I'll skip introductions. You can talk to me afterwards. So this is Kaneshi Market in Accra. It's an amazing place to go to. It's got everything that you can imagine, from sort of fresh produce to you can get lovely tailor-made trousers, as I'm modelling today. But if you go as a tourist, it can be quite overwhelming. You may struggle to find your way around. You may miss out. You might not know what you're missing out on. So it's good to go with a guide, someone who knows that the tailors are on the 5th floor and who knows that one tailor's good for trousers and another's good for shirts. And about 6 months ago, I was given ownership of a service in a system a lot like this one. You may have heard of it. It's called the University of Leeds. And it's a lot like Kaneshi. It's also full of great stuff, and finding your way around in it is not easy. I don't know if you've ever tried to find your way around Leeds University, physically or org-maply. So I look after the consulting service arm of research IT, and we're an enabling team, essentially, and we're within a sprawling landscape of lots of interconnected IT and professional service teams. And many of these teams have limited awareness of one another, and it's constantly in flux. And to borrow from Matthew, we are an enabling team, and we are propagating good practice throughout the organisation and influencing culture. So I was really taken with that slide you showed earlier and recognised ourselves in that. But I took over this service with no org map, no manual, no phased handover, just kind of, it's yours now, off you go. And it felt a bit like landing in the forest. But not to worry, because I've come prepared. I've got my toolkit, my bag's stuffed full of really good stuff that I've gleaned over the years. I've got my team topologies. I've got user-centered design and modern software engineering. I've got DevOps, yay. And I'm going to forge a pathway to clarity. And then reality kind of meets expectation. And I can't help notice a parallel with birth preparation here, which is a not so distant memory for me. Because you spend months, maybe years, preparing for this big event, and then within minutes your birth plan's screwed up and thrown out the window. Nothing turns out as you expected. Any parents in the room, you'll know this. No, my kid will not eat that, but yeah, they do. So I was speaking with an RSE just yesterday. RSE is Research Software Engineer. And they were asking a question like, where have I gone wrong? Things have not turned out like I expected they would. And I wanted to say, you haven't done anything wrong. It's just that you're expecting the system to behave in a way that's predictable when it's inherently unpredictable. Because some systems are resistant to our best laid plans. And so when we try to lift our preferred tools, it can be problematic. For a tool to be effective, there is an implication there of constraints. In order for me to use some scissors, there's constraints implied. That's why I can't cut through the Oxford Dictionary with some scissors. And in this particular system that I'm describing, the people and the services, they have very high levels of autonomy. So trying to impose, to lift my tools and impose them top down onto this service is feels like trying to make a toddler wear a hat, you know. Yeah, you're going to get burned, but, you know, does the toddler care? No. So what I've been describing here is a complex self-organising system where the order and the behavioural change are emergent. They tend to emerge bottom up, and it's constantly in flux. And that sort of renders your kind of traditional approaches to problem solving ineffective, in a sense. So I came across this practitioner who described it quite well here. They say, we reach for our expert advice and proven practices, we pursue clearly defined problem statements and root causes, we want a clear vision of the ideal end statement, and we want measurable outcomes. And that's what I went in with the intention. I hoped for those things. And then in this system, none of it felt like it was available to me. And then that sort of what now hits. Well, what do I do now? It's a challenging moment, and people can either give up, or you keep pushing, and you might feel like, I don't know if it was Matthew or someone else has used this analogy of pushing a boulder up a mountain. And you can, this is hard personally as well, because it can feel like a personal failure. It can feel like we're the ones failing, but we're actually trying to reach for approaches that the system isn't ready to accommodate. So, what if my first port of call isn't a tool at all? So instead of trying to impose order, my approach then is to focus on listening first and learning. So if you think about approaching a complex social situation, you know you can't control what's going to happen. So your best tactic really is to observe, to pay attention and respond to what emerges throughout the conversation. Oops, sorry. Now, some of you may already be familiar with the Cynefin framework, which offers us a way of understanding what kind of system we're in and how we might act within that particular type of system. And in complex systems, Cynefin suggests a kind of mode of working that it describes as this probe, sense, respond. And I've kind of got my own slightly adapted version of that, which is probe, learn, cache. Because what I'm finding is that I'm not always in a position to respond immediately, but I'm always in a position to learn something and hold it. And then the learning accumulates, and gradually the picture comes more into focus. But that kind of approach only really works if you know roughly what you're listening for. And in my case, I found that there were sort of three types of signals that I was listening out for. So there's the value signal, what matters to people now. And friction, what's getting in the way of realising that value. And potential, what it could be if the conditions were right. And there are lots of signals all around you. You just have to look for them. They might not present in an ordered way. They might not present in the way that it does for you, the way that it does for someone else. But we can consciously, deliberately tune into those signals. But there's a catch to this. So uncertainty, there's no getting away from it. Uncertainty can be uncomfortable, an uncomfortable thing to sit with. It can keep us in a high state of arousal. And how that manifests emotionally can be quite negative. So we can experience anxiety, stress, frustration, maybe feeling that we ought to know more, that we're not enough, or we're not doing enough. And if that's you, then maybe this is something to think about within yourself. Is it me, or is it actually the system? Because if you have this kind of relationship with uncertainty, then when you land in a complex system, then you can suffer. You can try to do too much. You can be the one trying to push the boulder up the mountain. But we can change this. So, another personal anecdote. One of my children is very passionate about circus skills. Big up Circus Leeds. As a result, I've been to dozens of circus performances, and it's taught me something about uncertainty. It's exhilarating, it can be exciting, it can be fun. And I wondered, what's the difference then? Why is that kind of uncertainty, something positive and fun? And I think it's because we trust in the skills of the performer. And so when we're operating under a lot of complexity and with a lot of uncertainty, we need to learn to trust ourselves and each other in the same way. And I found that deliberate learning as a methodology can help. So approaching every activity, every interaction as a kind of learning experiment. So asking, what can I learn here, rather than what outcome can I expect. It can create these sort of micro moments of order inside the complexity. And it doesn't remove uncertainty, but it can help me to move more purposefully through it. We're human after all. Living with uncertainty is just part of the human experience, and we can create those moments of clarity for ourselves through the deliberate learning that punctuate it. And if you enjoyed that, you'd like to learn more about learning as a methodology for thriving in complexity, then please talk to me. I'm very passionate about learning in all its different manifestations, and I'd love to talk to you about that. Thank you.